Hi, it's Jen Rubin, editor-in-chief of the Contrarian. So happy it's Monday, and so happy Pablo Torre is back with us. Hi, Pablo.
Jen, if it's Monday, it's me invading your life.
So you've been doing a lot of work on Bill Belichick, and been making some waves, doing some real reporting, having a lot of sources. What is going on here? What have you been able to find out?
Yeah, so on my show, Pablo Torre finds out. You can subscribe on Substack. Pablo.show is the link. I've spent months of my life getting to the bottom of a story that is not merely a gossipy supermarket tabloid age gap relationship story, but really a story about power. Who gets it, how it's defended, how it's distributed. In the case here of the highest paid public employee in the state of North Carolina. So that's Bill Belichick. That is the former coach of the Patriots, known for a couple of things, Jen. Any sports fan would, I think, co-sign this. Discipline, privacy, defensive strategy, all things now that seem like they are the opposite of the story that I've reported on my show, which involved 11 people, 11 sources that have worked directly with Jordan Hudson, his now 24-year-old girlfriend, who's also a person who is really in charge of many of the facets of his life, including, and this is the friction point over the weekend with me and the University of North Carolina, a great public institution, again, that has found itself not just, I would say, besmirched, but frankly, panicked by the PR disaster that was let loose by that CBS Sunday Morning interview, in which she sort of announced herself to certainly many precincts of our nation. But that conflagration behind the scenes has led to me reporting, for instance, that Jordan Hudson is no longer welcome, allowed, or wanted in the football building at North Carolina. And this led to North Carolina coming out with a PR statement not long after, in which they did a couple of interesting things. Number one, they did not say this reporter is incorrect. She is welcome here. They actually said, and I can actually just read you the quote because I think it's
Yes.
instructive.
It's just a non-denial denial. Yes.
While Jordan Hudson is not an employee at the university or Carolina Athletics, she is welcome to the Carolina football facilities. Jordan will continue to manage all activities related to Coach Belichick's personal brand outside of his responsibilities for Carolina football and the university. None of that had been said before until then, until my reporting came out, which is to say that they are saying she is welcome at the facility, contrary to my reporting, to be clear, but they packaged it with such clear legal language around the ways in which they cannot be held accountable for what has become behind the scenes a tremendous mess with questions of legal liability that I'm happy to get into, but I feel like I will just
Right.
talk forever unless you stop me
So
here, Chad.
tell us why they are so panicked and what this story has done to the football team, to the university, to his own image.
Yeah, so the image is, for instance, with the Patriots, the number one enemy of Bill Belichick when it came to what he most stood against was distraction. Distraction, and college football coaches endlessly talk about this. Distraction is the way to undo what might be a promising real season, a promising real job, honestly, in which you're in charge of in which you're being paid $10 million a year to recruit young people to play for your program. And the CBS thing, just because it's the most obvious reference point, what that was self-destruction. So Jordan Hudson, for instance, is credited in Bill's book. It was a book promo as his idea mill and his creative muse. She had posted on Instagram extensively about how they met. There were no preconditions, I can report, to the interview. It was a puff piece, a would-be puff piece about this guy with lessons that all of us non-coaches could take from his life. By her interrupting on camera and trying to control the interview, she did two things. Number one, she ensured that she would be the story in ways that she did not intend. And I'm not saying that we don't all make mistakes. The second thing I'm reporting, though, is that this mistake was part of a fact pattern that has extended for more than a year throughout the behind the scenes operations of Bill Belichick new media person. So part of what happened when the Patriots didn't want to hire him anymore, have him around anymore, was that Belichick decided, I'm going to be the thing I hate the most, which is a media person. And he did about a half dozen shows all at the same time. And I talked to, again, 11 people who worked directly with Bill and with Jordan. What they all say is that it was a nightmare in which I was working for a person who, and this is, I'll paraphrase the quote because I want to just make sure people can refer to it if they want the precise wording. A person whose resume was so thin compared to her confidence. And I am not saying, by the way, that we should be blaming the girlfriends or the spouses of great men when they do bad, right? I'm not saying that. I'm the person who says, hey, get off of Olivia Munn's back. She's not the reason why Aaron Rodgers is playing poorly. That is a trope as well, right?
Yeah.
It's Delilah, right? It's the Delilah syndrome. That's not what this is. This is a story about power and who's in charge. And at every stop, I mean, this is what's remarkable. At every stop they've had in which Bill Belichick and Jordan Hudson were together making decisions, she ended up being the person that everyone had to deal with. And when you behave in a way that is actively destroying your reputation, and the episode has all of the examples beyond which the CBS one is just a symptom. Um, it's something that the university realized we didn't sign up for this part. In fact, no football coach has ever acted like this when it came to their longtime spouse, let alone their 24-year-old girlfriend.
So is the university mostly upset because it's a 24-year-old girlfriend? Are they upset because Belichick, who is supposed to be in charge of everything, looks like a pawn that's being moved around the stadium? Or is it some combination of all these things that has the university so nervous about what's going on?
It's all of the above. And it's not merely that, this 24-year-old is, Silicon Valley, we've met lots of bright young people who are very ambitious and who get stuff done. I'm not saying that a young person cannot be a prodigy by any means, but the parallel I would draw when it comes to Silicon Valley, and here I'm being generous, right, is to like Mark Zuckerberg as a comparison point. It's that sometimes you don't know the industries you enter well enough so that when you make decisions, let's think of the Doge guys, big balls, and his cohort. Um, it tends to be the case that you invite unintended consequences. And there has been a trail of unintended consequences when it comes to, and this is where Bill Belichick's own family enters the picture and his inner circle, his advisors, who got, frankly, treated as doormats by Jordan Hudson. They are saying that they are worried actively that this woman who Bill met on a plane when she was 19 years old, that's the story that she didn't want to tell, that didn't want told on CBS, is the actual math of this. A 19-year-old that he then began to put in charge of his life
Yeah.
because his former PR person left, works for Boston College now, just for those keeping score at home, entered a power vacuum and is undoing his legacy. And beyond, like, look, what I'm not saying is that there is a cognitive Manchurian candidate concern. I am not absolving Bill Belichick of his own decision making. I am merely saying that what everyone signed up for when it came to Bill Belichick is something that they're
Was not
getting.
this.
And in fact, it's diametric opposite.
Right. Right.
And that's the problem.
Right. So this goes back to another issue, which is kind of the cult of the coach. The coach as the genius, the cult of the coach as a model for the rest of us, as the epitome of organization, of people management, that we
Yes.
tend to elevate these people. And the flip side of that is when things go wrong or the owner of the team doesn't get good players or stuff just happens. Suddenly they are the worst coach and they are disposable. And we saw the flip side of this with the Colorado Rockies, which granted has a terrible team. Granted did lose 21 to nothing. But what did they do? They turned around and fired the manager. is this really fair? By the way, the Dodgers manager, who has been a friend, said, listen, not even Casey Stengel could fix this team.
That's look, I think the question always is, can you isolate the variable?
Yeah,
Whose fault is this, right? And always it's a pie chart. It's never all just one thing. But the coach is, look, there's another truism I like to cite when it comes to do we fire the coach or not, which is a eternal parlor game in sports, obviously. It's can you fire the player? You
yeah,
know? And it's like if we can't, well, the coach has got to go.
right,
And sometimes look, just to move on from the Belichick thing is so obviously an isolated
right.
variable where it's like there's a new guy with a new regime and he has this new person and we are
And
running
everything's going woo. Yeah,
exactly. And so they're controlling, I mean, in this one way, they can control the variable. It's like, oh,
right,
okay, this is because of him. College sports, by the way, as you know, is more than just is this guy making decisions on a field? It's also you're the face of the program. You're kind of the mayor of this town. You are again a highly paid
the
public
most
employee
highly paid person in the
in
state.
the whole state by far.
Yeah,
Um, that you're also sort of a representative of a university, of a
right,
real good university. So there's just that as different from pro sports.
right,
But when it comes to the baseball stuff, I'm like, yeah. Sometimes you also fire the coach, the manager, because you don't really know what else to do because
right.
you're losing and the people want accountability and cutting loose, the guy hitting seventh in your order isn't worth it. Like it's time to just try something different. And that's where the coach, and going back to the book Belichick wrote, it's where the coach as motivator comes in. Can you get a new voice? Can you unlock the thing inside of the players? Is it this coach's fault and not your fault as the GM? Power,
Right.
I mean, sports is a study of power, Jen. Um,
Absolutely.
GMs saving their jobs by pointing to somebody else is the oldest game that is
Right.
played in politics, obviously.
Right. Right.
And we
Right. I'm
see
not
that here.
responsible for anything. Just the he was the coffee boy. I never saw him before.
I
That's,
just hired him. I just hired him and empowered him, but this has
yeah,
nothing
yeah,
to do
yeah.
with me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And you can't fire the owner. And that seems to be the underlying kind of issue is these people may or may not have sports genius in their gene pool. And yet they have the money and they take these teams, not college teams, but professional teams, it's kind of like trophies in some cases. And sometimes they know what they're doing, and sometimes they don't know what they're doing. And it also seems that, again, this is such a larger issue than sports. Our definition of success and failure is so limited. We just had El Clásico this Sunday, which is one of my favorite matches. For those of you who
Yeah.
are not familiar, this is Barcelona and Real Madrid, two of the iconic teams of European soccer, of Spanish soccer, and they were facing off. Barcelona is in the lead in their division. Real Madrid is second. And being second for Real Madrid is like death. And they got knocked out of the European Championships. And you would think this is like the worst team that ever happened. They're second best. They're number two next to a phenomenal team that, by the way, has been completely rebuilt. Talk about good manager, a bunch of high people,
Yep.
play price people, Messi, Neymar, all those people went out. They got a bunch of young kids and were phenomenal. And now Real Madrid is essentially firing their coach. Are they going to find someone better? I mean, is this just now appeasing the crowd? Is this like throwing red meat so that the Lions don't attack the team?
Yeah, yes. I hesitate to make it as simple, but I think ownership. But by the way, like Spanish soccer, fascinating for lots of
Oh, I know.
geopolitical reasons. Madrid being the royal team, that's their
Yes,
lineage. Barcelona, by the way, having all of the air of wealth while being quietly broke behind the scenes.
yes,
Um,
yes.
like all of this is sort of like a keeping up appearances through line, right? Like,
Yeah,
what does it
exactly.
mean to have to tell your fan base, your customers, that we're
Yes,
we're still great? Don't
Yeah.
worry. And the
Yes.
manager, again, like if you can't fire if the player isn't the sacrificial lamb, you need something. You need
Right.
something. And I
It's
dare say that it's sometimes that logical.
And if we take it back over to politics, unfortunately, the country can't fire Trump, although many of us would dream of this. So he kind of ushers Elon Musk out the door.
Yes.
He pushes him aside. A Signalgate scandal that, any 10-year-old kid with a tech background would know not to do, namely to put a bunch of people on a classified call, one of them being in Russia, goes fooey. So rather than fire the president, which you can, you fire the national security. This is like the way
Yes.
that, and we always think of these people, they think of themselves as geniuses, as managerial, icons, the smartest, the best, stable genius. And all they do is fire people below them who they hired in the first place.
It's so Trump, by the way, it's hard not to think of sports when I see all of
Yeah,
the only the best people, right? Just that
right.
trope.
Only the best. Yes,
Only the best
exactly.
people, except I've hired and fired more people than any president ever, including, by
And you
the
have
way,
now Gene Pirro and
oh
Pete
my
Hegseth,
God, just like
which is a Saturday live skit.
literal Fox News anchors doing jobs that are reserved for people with competence. The Michael Waltz thing, so
Yeah.
funny to me in this regard, of course, because also, right, this is the PR of it. They didn't want to give the left Michael
Yes.
Waltz's scalp, right? They don't want to give in. And so, and this is just the dystopia. Instead of firing Michael Waltz, we will merely make him the ambassador to the United Nations, as if that is like the demotion to the minors. And
Right.
it's just crazy. Like that says everything about how they see hiring, firing, and what the org chart really is. It is
Right.
not people hired for competence. It is
And,
a system of reward for his self-enrichment.
and by the way, they are so silly that they must not have realized that it takes Senate confirmation. So now they may kick Mike Waltz to the side because people like the great senator Mark Warner, who I interviewed not too long ago, has a bunch of questions. Wouldn't you imagine for
Shocking,
Mike
shocking.
Waltz? And it may come up, at the confirmation. So sometimes you can't even fire people, correctly. So as we reach the end of our time, when we take a step back,
Yeah.
what really is good leadership in sports? How do you define it? How do you know it? How do you
Yes.
appreciate it? What is a good leader of a team, of a league, of anything like that?
I have a very simple view on this, having studied and interviewed and having investigated coaches for a dozen plus years.
Right.
They have good process. What does this
Interesting.
mean? It means that they have a way in which they do their job that is convicted in its principle, even if the results don't go their way. You
Fascinating.
cannot control result. You can only control process. Jen, I will do something embarrassing because I didn't plan this, but my shirt says trust the process on it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it's a cliche, but it originated, if anywhere else, in sports.
Yeah.
Because sports is a results-oriented business and people drive themselves crazy, right? Like, again, all these coaches, like, I did the right thing, but it didn't work. A great coach to me knows that they can control what is in front of them. They can control what they can control. Sounds like a cliche, is really a profound insight into how it is that someone has a plan. What is your plan? What can you do here? You don't promise, you know, economic
You told it.
it's just
You
hard
told
not to
it.
think of tariffs, right? You're just
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
what was the process here? I know you're
There was
promising
none. Yes.
results, but what's the process? So too is it with coaches. They have a plan, they have a philosophy, and they're going to execute that. And if it doesn't work out, at least they controlled what they could control. They did not lie to you and say, I am the guy who can do this. And it just can't be simpler than trusting their own process.
And that, I think, is a great place to leave it because we have an administration that has no process, that
None.
is complete chaos. That's all about self-aggrandizement, self-worship, graft, corruption. There is no process. And you cannot expect, like, chimpanzees at the typewriter to have Shakespeare come out at the other end. It just isn't going to happen. And so we lurch from crisis to crisis to crisis to disaster. And just like those monkeys at the keyboard, every once in a while, like, a complete sentence comes out, but then it's back to gibberish.
Yeah, typically good results follow good process over time. That is the data nerd in me as well, right? Have
Yeah.
a plan, follow the plan, keep on trying it until they won't let you, and then we can change and find someone else. And that's okay. But my
Right.
God, the whole accidentally, we're going to craft a masterpiece here. We await this administration's not even masterpiece, but just like, coherent children's watercolor that we can put on our wall. I'm still waiting
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah. I think we're going to have a long wait. Well, Pablo, it's always great talking to you. We'll see you next time, and trust the process. That's a good one. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I'll try my best.
All right. Take care. Bye bye.